Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? Glad to have you here. We are going to be having a chat today about AI. Hopefully, you've enjoyed that video that you were just watching a few moments ago, and obviously that was a Microsoft promotional video that we're playing there, showing you some of the amazing productivity benefits that Copilot promises. So today we're going to run through our presentation. We've got some bits in there to talk to you about what AI is, where it's been, how we've got to where we are today. Equally, some of the risks that maybe we need to be considering before we run out and start embracing AI and using it as a productivity tool. But also, hopefully, we've got a few demos and examples of Copilot that's going to be used. And that might be your first time you've seen Copilot. It might give you some visibility of some of what we can do. Hopefully, there's a bit of time at the end for questions and answers. We're hoping this is going to be about an hour long. And we'll take any questions if anybody wants to have a look at anything. And obviously, if you want us to come and demo this stuff to you, more than happy. Please get in touch and we can go through it. So AI is delivering productivity benefits. So are you ready? That's the big question, isn't it? So what are we going to talk about very briefly? We just mentioned we're going to go into the history of AI, where we've been, how we got here, the art of prompting, something that you may or may not have heard as a term. And that's how do we ask the right sort of questions to an AI or a large language model to make sure we're maximizing what we're getting back from the system. Sometimes we can be a bit misleading. We can be too wordy. We can be too short and not get things right. So we're going to go into how to craft the perfect prompt. We've got some demos of Copilot, and then we're going to talk about some of the risks that are involved with unleashing this in your organization. And that isn't there to scare you. It's absolutely something that should be embraced. But it's about making sure that you do that in a safe and secure way, where we're not overexposing information, where we're being ethical about our approach. Okay, so let's kick off. Interesting stat to start us then. So this is a graph which shows us lots of really common SaaS-based applications that have been around, and we've got some older ones that have been around for a long time, like Google Translate. We've got Spotify in there, Pinterest in there. Probably the most famous application, web-based application, SaaS-based application, if you want to call that, was TikTok. Released a few years ago, and it took the world by storm. There was lots of press, lots of media about how quickly that platform was adopted and people were signing up for it. And you can see here, this graph tells us the number of months taken to reach 100 million users. So TikTok took 9 months, okay, and that's a pretty massive, pretty impressive feat on its own. But to give you some idea of the interest around AI, ChatGPT, which it was kind of the founder here when we talk about generative AI anyway, took 2 months. That's 100 million people in 60 days that signed up and started using ChatGPT. So it gives you some idea of, as a human race, I mean, you might call it laziness, I guess, but our desire to have things done for us quickly and automated and make things easier for us. So that's been fantastic, and we've seen that within ChatGPT. Its adoption was groundbreaking, and I'm sure many of you on the call have used ChatGPT. We did a seminar yesterday where I asked exactly that question, and everybody in the room put their hand up. So I'm going to make an assumption that everybody here has heard of or has used ChatGPT in some capacity. So, as it says here, it really was, the groundbreaker. It was a thing that started the generative AI conversation. Now, AI as a term has been around for quite a while, but it's important to recognize the difference between AI as it was 5 or 6 years ago and what we talk about when we just use the word AI now. What we mean now is really this idea of generative AI. Old AI was kind of like a logic gate system. So what would happen is that we had a question, or we asked a system to do something, and it went through a series of questions where the answer was either true or false. So it was a condition in that sense. So we'd say, do this thing, and then we'd ask a condition, is it this or this? And if it's this, then it goes off and asks another question, another condition, and another condition. And when you layer through and you process through all those different conditions, what you end up with is something that appears to look quite intelligent. The truth is, it wasn't really thinking for itself. It was still ultimately just following a set of processes. Generative AI is very, very different. Generative AI, whilst fundamentally similar, it's actually trained itself on large sets of data. We call those large language models. Those sets of data tend to be text-based, depending on the model that we're talking about. And it's able to not to go further than just understanding the words that are being presented on a page. It's not just saying, the bus is green. It's ultimately having an understanding of what a bus even is. As soon as you say the word bus, it's not just saying there's a word there called bus. It's saying, I know that a bus has 4 wheels and a steering wheel and a handbrake and carries people around. So ultimately, that large language model has a level of intelligence, or ChatGPT has a level of intelligence, and it understands the context of everything that's being said when it reads, rather than the individual words. Okay, so ChatGPT took the world by storm. But ultimately, it wasn't there. It was the inception of a number of organisations. The two big organisations that are associated with ChatGPT are an organisation called OpenAI, which is where you will go to the website that you've been to probably if you use ChatGPT, and they were the kind of the research institute, the people that built the software and created the platform. But it was also largely invested into by Microsoft. Okay, so to the tune of billions of pounds. So OpenAI is the kind of the face, or the consumer face, maybe we call it, of this large language model and this generative AI and this what we call GPT. Okay, and within the ChatGPT world, fantastic. I mean, I give an example every time I speak to people about this. So for those of you that have heard me speak before, I'm going to use the same story again. But I would use things like ChatGPT to go home and in the evening, I might speak to my daughter and I say, okay, what have you been to? What have you been up to today? And she might say, well, at school today, I was out in the playground, I was kicking a football around, I fell over and I bruised my knee. And then we got up and then we went off and played in the woods. And, she had a chat with one of her friends, etc., etc. What I might do when she got home and I only wanted to read her a sort of bedtime story, I'd go into ChatGPT and I'd say, write me a story about a little girl called Ava that went to school today. She played football with her friend. She fell over. She grazed the knee. She went and played in the woods. And then I might go crazy at the end of it and go, and then they met a magical unicorn and flew off into the clouds, and it would create a really creative story. So within seconds, by putting a very short, easy prompt in and referencing some things in the day, it spat out this lovely story that I can read her before she goes to bed, and it really resonates with her. Fantastic, great thing, top dad, all that sort of stuff, right? But ultimately, ChatGPT wasn't born for the need to just satisfy our sort of personal entertainment. There was a promise of productivity, there was a promise of increased efficiency, and certainly Microsoft wouldn't have been investing billions of pounds into the solution just to allow us to read bedtime stories. So some people would use this to sort of write sales proposals and documents and bits and pieces like that. Fantastic. You can really see the use of how ChatGPT and its responses would be able to craft or steer your direction when you come into writing any sort of large volume of text, or even just to greater your understanding of something you're not aware of. So when you do that, the problem is that you can see, I could use this in the business environment. But when I bring it into the business environment and I say, okay, I want you to learn some information about maybe a file I've got, a PDF document, some information that I'm going to put into the system, I've got to give it something to have some understanding. And those, at the moment, ChatGPT can only learn from the internet, okay, or from digital data that's out there and publicly available to it. It doesn't have any awareness of your data inside your organization. It wouldn't have any awareness of certain acronyms that maybe you use within your business. That are specific to your industry, perhaps, or specific to your business even. So having that level of awareness to that degree is not something ChatGPT can do. But equally, you can give it that awareness, but it involves you taking some of your company data and throwing it at ChatGPT and sort of allowing it to understand that. So there's something called prompt engineering, where you say, here's a bunch of information, I'm going to give that to you in my prompt, and then I'm going to ask you questions about the information I just gave you, and you can reword it for me, and you can restructure it. The problem is lots of organizations went, well, hang on a minute. We can't be having our company data lifted, copied, sent to ChatGPT, because of course that information would be leaving the UK, going over to the US, the servers in America, landing on the ChatGPT platform, being analyzed, and then giving you a result. So that information, once you've lifted it and moved it, and it's now sitting on an American server, that's there. Okay, you're not getting that back. That's potentially even being used to further train the ChatGPT model. Okay, so don't panic if you've done that. You probably need to be a bit aware that you don't want to be doing that. It's quite a big concern, unless your information is globally public, in which case it doesn't matter too much, does it? But if it isn't, and you've got some sort of intellectual property, you've got sensitive documents, things like that, your approach, even your approach to some of the products and services you deliver, they might be confidential. They might be sensitive to the way that your business operates. So if it's marketing collateral, marketing material, maybe that's okay. So to those points on the right-hand side of the slide here, we've got like kind of 3 thumbs downs. Okay, that isn't to say ChatGPT is bad. It's a great tool. It's a great product. It's just in a business sense, it's lacking some way. So we're using the data that we're providing is being potentially used to train the model further. We've got some concerns with our data sovereignty, and ultimately it is trained on publicly accessible information. So it doesn't have an awareness of your environment and your solutions. Okay. So I mentioned a moment ago that Microsoft were heavily involved in that investment and in the development of ChatGPT. So we enter the next stage of evolution, and sort of partway through last year, Bing Chat became a thing, Bing Chat Enterprise. It's now called actually Copilot, so just to be really confusing. But for those of you that use the Edge web browser rather than Google Chrome, for example, when you open up Edge, you will see an icon in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And if you click on that, you'll find this thing called Copilot. Okay, and it used to be called Bing Chat Enterprise. We've kept it there because some people are pretty much aware of what it was called there. There's a few differences with this though. That is basically ChatGPT baked into your web browser. Okay, so if you've got Edge, if you're running Windows, then you will have Edge. If you open up Edge and you click on that little Copilot logo, you've got ChatGPT ready to go in the web browser for you. Okay, and if you sign into that Edge browser with your work Microsoft 365 account, there's a couple of key differences. You can see there on the screenshot, right in the middle of the slide in green text, it says your personal and company data are protected in this chat. So what does that mean? Unlike ChatGPT, where we are entering data in and it's leaving the UK borders and it's going over to the States and it's being kind of analysed on the ChatGPT platform. What's happening here is that Bing Chat Enterprise or Copilot is looking just purely within your Office 365 environment. It's built on top of ChatGPT, but all of the information you provide to it never leaves your Office 365 or your Microsoft 365 bubble. And that, to be a little bit more complicated, that might be your personal Microsoft 365 bubble, or it could well be your organization's Office 365 or Microsoft 365 environment. Okay, so if you've got using a personal account, it'll be in your personal stuff. If you're using a work account, it's going to be in your work stuff. Okay, so the information that you apply never leaves that environment, and that's really a key thing to take away. So we've solved that issue with data sovereignty. Okay, we're not now leaving the UK border because your Microsoft 365 tenancy should be based in the UK, running from an Azure data center within the UK. And ultimately, the information that you're entering, so we're taking information out of some of our intellectual document or property from our documents, and we're grabbing that information, we're pasting it into this environment. Well, that's not going to ChatGPT. That's just sitting within the Office 365 environment still. So first thing to say, this is free. Okay, so this is part of your Microsoft experience, whatever you're using. All you need is the Edge web browser, click on the Copilot icon, and you can start to work with this environment in a much more secure way than you could do with ChatGPT. However, this has no awareness of the documents that you store within your Office 365 environment or your Microsoft 365 environment. Okay, it's not aware of your emails, your Teams chats, your documents, your Word docs, your PowerPoint slides, anything that's stored within Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive. It hasn't got visibility to that. It's just able to respond to the prompts you give it and the information it's able to see on the internet. So how do we solve that last one? And that's where we bring in Copilot from Microsoft 365. And this is the kind of groundbreaking piece. It's been out there in the enterprise domain for quite a few months, but very excitingly, in the last 2 or 3 months, it's now available to the SME market and consumable through a program called CSP. Okay, now the big shift here is that this is ChatGPT, this is Bing Enterprise Chat. We've called it Copilot. The big difference now is this runs entirely inside your Office or your Microsoft 365 environment, but it's able to read all of those documents, your Teams chats, your emails, your documents. It has an awareness of your business, your organization. It can train itself on the documents that you store within your environment, okay? And that's key, because now we've got this artificial model, or artificially intelligent model, that has understanding of our business. It can make suggestions and recommendations. It can create sales proposals based on our old sales proposals, okay? It can create quotes and documents and margins because it has an awareness of some of the information maybe we're storing inside spreadsheets and our Excel documents. So a huge, huge step forward, and something that lots of people have been asking for a long time. And it also importantly lifts itself and can bring itself to other parts of the Microsoft 365 environment. So when we talk about Word and Excel and PowerPoint, we can also talk about things like Power BI, Power Automate, some of the other tools that are available within the 365 ecosystem, where we can streamline operational processes. So we can start to use AI to recognize an email that maybe has come from a customer where the customer's a bit upset, because the AI is able to determine sentiment. It's able to work out whether that email that's received is actually an email with somebody complaining, or whether that email is somebody saying that they're really, really happy. And you might choose to make action on the back of that. You might need to expedite a process. You might need to speed something up. You might want to get an automatic response sent back, which is worded in the same way every time, rather than different human beings that do different things, okay? So a great platform. I'm sure many of you have played with some of these things. I'm not sure that many of you have played with Copilot yet. The closest thing you can get that for free really is within Bing Enterprise Chat, okay? But it's not the only Copilot out there. This diagram, I appreciate that might be quite small. We will make sure we can share that with you in bigger detail if you need it. But you can see here in the middle, we've got this idea of Microsoft Copilot, but all the way around that ring, around the smaller pieces, are all the other Copilots. And then we're talking about a very tiny part of it today. At the very bottom of that graph, there's a piece called Modern Work. And within Modern Work, we've got things like SharePoint, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, OneNote, Loop, Stream, and Viva, okay? And we're not even talking about all of those today because we haven't got enough time. But we are going to show you some examples of some of those apps being used and how Copilot integrates with them. But going further around the disk there, you can see that there is even a security Copilot at the top, okay? So security Copilot links into things like Microsoft Defender and Sentinel, and allows us to kind of create some intelligent data analysis of some of the things that are happening from a security perspective. Windows 11 has a Copilot baked into it. It's different to the Microsoft 365 Copilot, but it's baked into your operating system to help you streamline and work faster with the Windows operating system. If there's any developers or software developers on the webinar today, you might be aware of GitHub Copilot, and that's allowing us to write software code and kind of develop bits and pieces much more quickly. And of course, that's being leveraged massively in the media by some of the ransomware gangs and people that can now write malicious code without ever needing to learn how to code. We've got the Power Platform. We talk about things like Copilot Studio, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI, and again, going into things like Power BI and say, create me a dashboard. Rather than me meaning to be a Power BI expert, I can go and say, Copilot, create me a dashboard that shows me my turnover over the last 5 years versus my profit. And away we go. It generates as a fantastic Power BI report based on the information that it has available, which might be in spreadsheets. And it might even, to extend further than that, it might even be coming through things called APIs directly into your third-party finance packages and things like that. So lots and lots of Copilots there. LinkedIn's got it, has got it available. Salesforce has got it coming. Some of these big SaaS providers are already releasing their own versions of Copilots that hopefully will start to play nicely with the Microsoft ecosystem. Okay. So I guess some of the value that I want to try and get out today, and I'm going to go quickly through these bits because we want to get to the demos. That's the exciting bit. Is the art of prompting. How do we make sure that when we start to see some investment into things like AI, that we're getting the most out of what we're buying into? Because very often, we see people start to use these platforms and they don't sort of really get the responses they want, and it isn't quite as overwhelming as maybe they thought it would be, and transformational as maybe they thought it would be. So there's a few little bits and important things to take away when we ask AI questions. So when we ask AI a question, we call that a prompt, okay? We basically feed it some information, We push it in a direction maybe, or we just straight up ask it a question based on its existing knowledge. Now, for those of you that went to school and did your GCSEs, it's a nice easy way to remember this. G for goal, C for context, S for source, E for expectations. So I've given you an example there on the slide that says, firstly, a goal, okay? What response do you want from Copilot? So the response I'm looking for in this prompt is to generate 3 to 5 bullet points. Okay, that's what I'm looking to get out of it. I want 3 to 5 bullet points. Brilliant. That's going to be nice and clear and concise. Then we have a context. Okay, why do we need it? So to prepare me for a meeting with John to discuss his phase 3 technology migration. Brilliant. Okay, so I now know what I've got to do and I now understand why I'm doing it. Third piece, the source. All right, focus on email and team chats since June. That's important, isn't it? Because I might have been speaking to John 3 years ago about this phase 3 project, but actually I'm not interested in any of that noise from 3 years ago. I'm just interested in the chat we've been having in the last few weeks. So of course, if I didn't put that thing in there, the information that Copilot would come back with might be completely legitimate. You know, I've asked it to tell me about this phase 3 technology thing. It's go, well, 2 years ago you spoke about X, Y, and Z. Well, no, I don't care about that. I'm interested in what I'm talking to him about at the moment. So we need to give it some source. Where should we be looking within our environment to get the most relevant information? And then thirdly, the expectations. You know, what I don't want Copilot to do in this scenario is give me a 15-page Word document with intricate details about everything that we discussed and what time we sent a Teams message or an email and what was discussed inside that. You know, please use very simple language so I can get up to speed quickly. All right, just abbreviate everything, get to the point, make this short. Maybe I'm about to walk into a meeting with John, and I want to get up to speed really, really quickly. So that is a well-crafted prompt, and if you can kind of nail off all those 4 pieces, you'll find that the return that you get out of using AI, and this isn't specific to Copilot, this applies to ChatGPT, this applies to the enterprise chat, all of the solutions that really are AI-based, they're the kind of the 4 pillars that you're only trying to build your prompts around, okay? So if you can do that, fantastic. So to be a bit more generic about it though, we've also got some effective, just general effective approaches versus those less effective approaches. You know, being clear and specific. Specific's probably the key thing there, actually. The truth is being clear. If you misspell things within an AI prompt, it doesn't matter too much because, again, going back to the point I made earlier, it's not looking at individual words. It's getting the gist of what it is you're saying. Okay, it understands the relationship between the words you're using. So, but being specific is, you know, if I'm too sort of standoffish and I'm too vague, then I'm going to get really vague results back again. Okay, if I tell it exactly what I'm looking for, exactly where to get that information from, and do it quickly for me and in a simple fashion, we're going to get an effective result. Keep it conversational is a really key thing. You know, actually, you don't want to do a data dump. I don't, you know, when I talk to my friends and colleagues, I don't walk up to them and say, here's a whole load of information, blah, 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 and absolutely data dump, and then ask a question at the end of it. Okay, what we can do is I can say my mindset might change as I have a conversation with another human being, right? I might say, let's talk about this thing, and they go, oh, you thought about X, Y, and Z, and I go, oh yeah, I didn't, I think about this. Oh, that's changed my direction. I now want, maybe I should look at this thing. Keeping conversation with AI is ultimately able to have a conversation with you, but it allows you to kind of dig in as you step forward in your understanding of something. You can ask more questions about that thing, and it kind of narrows down that source without you having to speak explicit potentially. You can say, I want to talk about this. Okay, don't care about that stuff. Just talk about this. Don't care about that stuff. Just talk about this, and you can narrow that down. Give examples. Great, a great one there. You know, I want to do this thing. Make it look like this. Okay, make it, you know, respond in the way, or you know, maybe I'm sure people have used ChatGPT to say respond in the style of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know, I'm being silly, but the point is that you can come back with really specific examples about how you want to do things. Ask for feedback's a good one. You know, ultimately, maybe you didn't get the response you want, so you can ask your AI engine to say, give me some tips on how I can get more specific information around this piece. What prompt should I use? It's very aware of its own state of mind. It's able to train you and steer you if you ask it the right questions about how to even ask it a question. Okay, legibly. Okay, yeah, obviously to some degree it will allow you to have spelling mistakes, bits and pieces in there. But if it's all over the place, then it won't give you a very good response. Accuracy, again, if you are using terms that are too wide, too kind of too vague. Ultimately, you know, if you're asking it about NDAs, but you actually don't mean a non-disclosure agreement, you mean something completely unrelated to that, its guess is going to be that you're talking about an NDA. So be specific if it's not very obvious. You know, that is a key point and a big difference between things like Copilot and ChatGPT. You know, if I asked it to ChatGPT to create me an NDA, it's going to look at everything on the internet and go, well, you know, 90% of the time when people refer to NDAs, they mean non-disclosure agreements. NDA might mean something completely different inside your business and inside your organization. So if 90% of the documents inside your organization refer to NDA as something different, then Copilot is going to have that awareness. It's going to be able to go, oh, actually, NDA probably doesn't mean non-disclosure agreement. It probably means the thing that's more relevant to the organization that I'm running. Be polite. Now, you can be polite. The truth is, I don't know about anybody else, but you start to use ChatGPT, you write a question, and you say, you know, please generate me this story. And I said, please. And at the end of it, you go, thank you. Okay. The truth is, within about a week of using any of these AI modules, you drop that stuff and you start going, create me a story, full stop, and you lose the politeness. You don't have to be polite. But very importantly, it will not allow you to start to sort of prod it and prompt it and push it in directions that are unethical, that maybe aren't considered appropriate. Its level of appropriateness has changed over time. Okay, so some of those scare stories about it coming out with wrong things are well founded. They're starting to kind of be reined in a bit. We're not going to go through the less effective ones for the speed of time, but you get the point that it's fairly contrast to what I've just said a moment ago. All right. So we talked a little bit about the history of AI, how we've ended up where we are, but the really important stuff now and the fun stuff, and I'm sure the reason that you've joined the call is to have a look at what Copilot actually looks like when you use it. Okay. I'm assuming a lot of you have played with ChatGPT, so I'm not going to demo that. The first thing to talk about really is that big enterprise chat piece. So this is a web page that we're looking at the moment. So it's our TaylorMade Technologies website. And what you'll find, this is a snapshot of my Edge browser. And what I want to point out really is in the top right-hand corner, that's the icon that I was talking about earlier on. You click on that and you effectively get a ChatGPT environment. So I'm going to ask the enterprise chat here just to summarize this web page. I don't want to scroll all the way through it and get a kind of in-depth. Might take me 20 minutes to read all of the pieces that we've got within our website. So I can just ask it to summarize it. All right. And it gives me a nice little brief summary based on the page that I'm looking at. And so this stuff is free. We don't have to pay for this stuff. This is just baked into the Edge browser. So it's a great way of speeding things up. It's similar to ChatGPT. I can ask it all sorts of other questions, but you can see there it's given me a couple of bullet points about things like our readiness assessment, the strategic roadmap, and some of the services that we deliver underneath that. A really, really great way to kind of make this whole process a bit quicker. But we can also do some really fun stuff with Big Enterprise Chat. If you're not aware, you might have seen some of these AI pictures that have been created, and that uses a different model. But I'm going to ask it to draw me a picture of a robot holding a cup of tea. Now, I've deliberately, obviously, misspelled me to MW. That was a deliberate thing to prove that it doesn't care too much about the way you spell something. But what you'll find within Big Enterprise Chat is I can make anything up I like. You know, I can have a cat sitting on a radio or whatever it is, right? But it's going to go away and it's going to generate me a picture. And there you go. It's drawn me or created me a picture of a robot holding a cup of tea. Okay, fantastic, super. So if I'm trying to create a sales proposal and I haven't really got the right images I want, maybe I want something a little bit unique, a bit quirky, something a bit different. I can't find a photo of that on Google Images. Not that I encourage you to go copy and Google Images and paste them into sales collateral, but ultimately you can start to work out whether or not you can use this content. All right. You need to be a little bit careful about copyright. We are going to talk about that later on when you start to use some of this stuff. But if you're using it for internal reasons, and largely the enterprise chat's being used for kind of personal reasons, it's a bit of fun, isn't it? So really, really powerful tool. But the thing we want to talk about really is Copilot. Okay, Copilot is a paid-for license which goes on top of your Microsoft 365 licensing as it stands today. And it enables productivity in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, lots of the applications that we use within the Microsoft 365 environment. So we're going to show you this. We're going to start with Microsoft Word. This is Microsoft Word. And whenever you open up a new Word document, you get this draft with Copilot piece. So I'm going to ask it here to create a customer-facing sales proposal for the TMT Thunderbolt motorbike, including the spec and the fact it comes in red, green, electric blue. We purchase the bike for £8,000, calculate a 22.8% markup and present this as the customer sell price. That's a pretty complicated prompt, isn't it? But actually, what I'm asking it to do there is to create me a sales proposal, to calculate a markup and a margin, to make sure you include some important information, which is the colours of the bikes that are available, and it's going to go away and do it. Okay, fantastic. Now, it's worth pointing out at this point that it's saying, right, the TNT Thunderbolt motorbike has a 1200cc liquid cooled four-stroke engine, 150 horsepower, some stuff about suspension in there, brakes. And where's it getting all that from? The truth is, there is no document behind this at the moment that tells them the spec of this. The truth is, Copilot is just making this stuff up. Okay, it is randomly making stuff up based on its understanding of what a motorbike has and what might be interesting and popular. And therein comes our first issue with AI as a whole, is that it just makes stuff up. Okay, it tries to, because I've not told it to be factually correct, to base its information on a particular document, it's just going to make stuff up. And the keen-eyed amongst you will have spotted something in that paragraph at the top, which really destroys my requirement for AI. So, but very importantly, it has included, you can choose from red, green, electric, blue. Brilliant. I asked it to do that. It's even included the fact that we buy the bike for, the CMC Thunderbolt is available at a competitive price of £9,806, which includes a 22.8% markup from our purchase price of £8,000. It's definitely not the thing that we want to be sending out to our customers. So actually, it's not that clever, is it? It's made a bit of a mistake. This is a sales document, it's a customer-facing document. How do I get that to change? Now, you'll have noticed in there that I can edit that and say, conceal the markup. Okay, so I've asked it to conceal the markup there and I've regenerated the prompt. And what it will do now is it will rewrite that whole bit of text. So with a little, going back to the idea of conversational, I've gone back and said, look, good effort, but actually I need you to do this thing with that text. So now it's going to rewrite that passage of text. All the text is largely the same again, the engine, the suspension, the brakes, etc., etc. It's going to include the color. It's got everything that I need in there, all very useful, okay? But this time, when we get down to it, see if we can find the right piece here, it just says the TMT Thunderbolt motorbike is available at a competitive price of £9,816, which includes the registration fee, the road tax, and the insurance. Now, I didn't tell it to include that either, did I? So maybe I need some more work on this. I need to steer this even more. But actually, the point is a starter for 10, how powerful is that? Just to go, give me the basis of a document that I can use as a sales proposal. And it's given me lots of stuff. But the point is, it's a Copilot. There's a reason it's called a Copilot. And the reason is because you're still in charge of it. You still need to go in, check that content, edit that content, confirm that it's factually accurate. Okay, the Copilot is there just to make things quicker for you. Okay, and give it and throw ideas at you and make that happen. So the idea of AI taking over the world probably isn't going to happen for a number of years into the future yet. So it still needs a bit of work. Okay, so other things I can do within there, I can also go to Copilot. I can ask it to summarize Word documents, to search for particular things, to remove certain paragraphs, to add paragraphs. But for the benefit of time, I will let you experiment with that in your own time. The next piece that I want to show you really is the Office or the Microsoft 365 environment. If you've logged into Microsoft 365 online, then you'll be aware of what you're looking at right here. And we've got Copilot. This is like the search engine for my business, okay? So I'm going to ask it a question, okay? What emails do I need to respond to and why? Remember, Copilot can see my inbox. It can see my documents. It can see everything that I've got. So I'm going to ask it just to summarize. I haven't looked at my inbox yet, but just quickly, what do I need to deal with? Right, I've got an email from Scott Whedon that you need to respond to. He's inquiring about the availability of the TMT Thunderbolt electric bike in electric blue and is willing to come over tomorrow and buy it with cash if it's available. Okay, great. Right, well, that's given me a real action straight away. Okay, I don't need to look at my mailbox. Might have come in through a Teams chat. It might have been someone sending me an email. Might be all sorts of things. Okay. So, do I know if we get it in electric blue? Maybe I'm not sure. What colours do we sell the TMT Thunderbolt in? I just want to check with Copilot. And Copilot's going to come back and say, right, well, according to this sales proposal, the TMT Thunderbolt motorbike is available in red, green, electric, blue. Well, it is, isn't it? Because we just created that sales proposal a few minutes ago, right? So there you can see a real action of it learning from the data that we're creating. Now, it might not factually be correct data, bear that in mind as well. But ultimately, it's able to pick up that information. So now I want to say, kind of go back to Scott and say, yeah, we've got an electric blue, come and buy it. So compose an email to Scott Weaver stating that we can provide the TNT Thunderbolt in electric blue. And it's going to go away and give me an idea, maybe of an email. I give, a way of wording that response back. So again, I haven't got to sit there kind of thinking about how I'm going to phrase this. It's going to sort my grammar out. It's going to sort out kind of some of my spelling mistakes. I'm terrible at typing, let's say. So it's going to really kind of phrase it out and put a decent narrative to it. Okay. So I could copy that email out now, stick it in an email and send it off to Scott. So you can see how quickly that's taken me time. I haven't had to go, right, I'll check my email, I'll scroll through my emails, what's the most urgent? Copilot's already told me what the most urgent one is there. It told me that Scott wants to buy this thing with cash right now. Brought that right to my attention. It's also told me, I'm not sure if we buy an electric blue, it's answered that question based on information that we've got stored inside the environment. And thirdly, it's given me a way to respond. So you can see that within a couple of minutes, I've kind of dealt with that issue, where I might have had to go and ask somebody if we put it in electric blue. And that might have taken another 2 hours and slowed our sales process down. So very, very powerful. But ultimately, this portal environment here allows me to search across all of my environment and ask questions about staff handbook. What's our pension scheme look like? Think about the data you got stored in some of your documents. Great for employee onboarding when they're asking you questions about how things and how processes inside the organization work. Copilot can probably answer a lot of that stuff. So next example, let's go to that email that it was referring to, right? We're in Outlook now. So you can see here I've got an email. This is the email that makes sense, doesn't it? Where it's come from. So let's read through the thread of this email. So, hi Scott, thanks for contacting us through our website. I can see you're interested in finding out more about ways to purchase the TNT Thunderbolt motorbike. We can offer flexible finance delivery options. Would you plan to pick the bike up or have it delivered? Do you have time for a call this afternoon? Oh yeah, that'd be great. Please call me on this number. I'm free now if that suits. Hi Scott, thanks for your time on the call. I'm sorry to hear that the bike was too expensive. As agreed, I've had a chat with a manager who's agreed to offer a 10% discount if paid in cash. Would this be of interest? Yes, but can I ask if it comes in electric blue? If it does, I'd be happy to pop over tomorrow and buy it with cash. Kind of comes together now, doesn't it? But I don't want to read all my emails like that. I can just click summary by Copilot. Okay, rather than reading a whole thread and all the emails, you can say, Scott, we can contact you to find out more about purchasing the bike. You asked them for their contact number and availability to call. They gave you their number. After the call, you offered them a 10% discount. They paid in cash. Scott showed interest, and they mentioned that they'd be happy to come over tomorrow if we had it in electric blue. Brilliant. So actually, I don't need to scroll through massive email chains now and just ask Copilot to summarize a lot of that for me. But importantly, I can also just get Copilot to start to respond. So I'm going to here draft a reply to this email. So I'm going to put compose a friendly response to Scott, stating that we can provide the bike in electric blue. Now, once that kicks off and it generates something, it's going to come up with a suggestion, a way of maybe responding to this email. And it might do that based on the way that I've written other emails. It'll try and train itself on the way that I talk. But it says here, we're happy to inform you that we have a TNT Thunderbolt motorbike available in electric blue. Maybe I don't like the way that that's phrased. I'm going to regenerate it. Let's get another suggestion from Copilot. Maybe I wasn't happy with the tone or whatever. This Scott, I'm glad to inform you that TNT Thunderbolt is available in electric blue. Would you be happy to arrange for you to come purchase it with purchase the bike with cash tomorrow? Brilliant. Now there's a catch here. There's always people that maybe you don't want to put such a nice, polite email to. You might be having a bit of a discussion, a bit of an argument with that person. At which point, we could always ask it to make the reply more abrupt. This time, let's see what it says. TNT Thunderbolt in electric blue is ready. Come by with cash tomorrow. See you soon. Right, pretty blunt. Don't suggest that you use that sort of tone in the sales capacity. But sometimes when you're negotiating contracts or dealing with suppliers, things like that, you can sometimes need to push buttons and make things happen. You need to change the tone of your email. And Copilot can do that. It can say, do this in a friendly manner, do this in an abrupt manner, do this in a well-worded, professional, creative, all sorts of key words that we can throw into our prompt to dramatically change the output and the outcome of our response. So use those words cleverly and wisely. Ultimately, that's a key part of having that assistance to do some of this work. And it comes back to really kind of giving it the goal. The goal is be abrupt. All right, coming back to our GCSE idea. So we're going to go away. It's going to create various responses. Okay, now I've asked it to do it a bit more professionally, be a bit more friendly. And we've got a really well-worded email there. We're happy to inform you the Thunderbolt motorbike in electric blue inquired about is ready for you. This is a rare and exciting opportunity to own a high-performance, eco-friendly motorbike that will take you to stand out on the road. Blah, 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 blah. Great email. Okay, well-worded. Happy with that. No problem at all. I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to send it. Really important thing, though, is I haven't made any changes to that. And because I didn't really make any changes, 365 is warning me that AI-generated content may be incorrect. So make sure you check that message before you send it. A good percentage of the email I'm about to send is generated by AI. So just make sure that you're happy with what you're about to send. I guess that's the don't blame Microsoft if you get in trouble with this email. Okay, so that's within Outlook. Superb, very useful. Let's have a little look at Teams. This is a meeting that we've had. This is a huge thing to take advantage of. You do lots of meetings where you need to write minutes and you need to construct bits and pieces. This is a Teams meeting. Okay, and what we're going to look at here is the recap tab that's available with Copilot. And the idea behind a recap, or behind a Teams meeting, is you can record it. And when you record it, it transcribes. So everything that people are saying within that meeting can be captured here. So we've got a conversation between Copilot and Lauren there, and ultimately it's seeing what Copilot's saying and what Lauren's saying and Copilot's saying, and it can understand the context of what's being discussed inside that meeting. Okay, but more importantly, because it can read all that transcript, it can summarize what's been going on. So you can see here we've got some meeting notes. Copilot talks about Microsoft 365 Copilot, and it also had some tasks at the bottom. We'll dig into that in a second. Okay, so I can go a bit further with Copilot. I can really ask some detailed questions. Maybe I missed this meeting. All right. And I want to catch up on the notes, okay? So let's generate some meeting notes. You might call these minutes, right? This is going to come back with all of the topics that got discussed. So there we go. Key topics, Microsoft 365 Copilot overview. Then we talked about the implementation plan of such a thing, then the preparation for implementation, and it even took off some actions at the bottom, okay, where probably somebody said, let's do something, let's not do something. Where were those things inside the conversation? If you hover over the little citations at the end of each of those things, you can see what was actually said in the Teams meeting when it summarized that piece of information, right? So you can actually dig in and skip the video to certain places to watch the recording of the meeting. But we can also ask it, okay, so that's great. You summarize what was discussed. I can catch up really quickly maybe on a meeting I've missed. But now I want to know what were the actions that actually came out the back of that. So when did somebody say, hey, Scott, can you deal with that? Lauren, I think you should go and do X, Y, and Z. You can see here that the action items were review organizational workflows to identify tasks that can be automated using Copilot and provide training to support to users to ensure they're able to effectively, etc., etc., etc. Okay. But we've got Scott's explaining, it tells me there, an action is Scott explained the features and benefits of Microsoft 365 Copilot. Scott outlined the steps involved in implementing Copilot, such as identifying use cases. Scott advised Lauren to review the organization workflows to identify X, Y, and Z. Okay. Anytime you say, I'll go and do that, can you deal with that? That's an action I'll take away. Maybe we'll put that down as an action for X. All of that information is going to be captured. Those are minutes. Those are actions off the back of the meeting. The minutes are those key topics that you discussed. And it will say, well, we talked about that for 5 minutes. Then we talked about this thing for another 10 minutes. And we talked about this thing for another 10 minutes. Okay. It's also given us some of the ideas we discussed. So where did people have conversations that maybe have pros and cons and conflicts and things that, had different opinions? So, I'm scrolling through this quickly, but we've got providing training and support to users. Here are the pros of that. Here are the cons of that. Okay, when was there positive energy about something? When was there negative energy about something? Really powerful stuff to go and capture within a Teams meeting. Certainly if you've missed the meeting, what an amazing way to catch up on those things. Maybe you're only interested in a very tiny part of that meeting, in which case ask it about the thing that you're interested in. It will come back with the information. It will skip the video to the point you actually want to watch it. And you don't have to worry too much about all the stuff that you're not that interested in. Okay, really, really powerful. Great way to start to maybe manage minutes and details around your Teams meetings. All right. So this time, let's have a look at PowerPoint. This time, we're going to go into Copilot. A little tip here: if you want to use Copilot effectively to do design and layouts and bits and pieces, pick your theme first. Okay, because otherwise it will create a fairly bland one unless you tell it to be a bit more creative. So I've picked a theme here. And I've asked it to create a presentation from the sales proposal document that we made earlier on. Okay, so create a presentation from sales proposal for the TNT Thunderbolt motorbike. Here it's popping up designer. It's asking whether or not I want to change my mind. but at the moment I'm happy just to stick with Copilot. And it's going to go away and it's going to start to draft a presentation. It's telling me there that it's going to create some slides that reference the introduction, the features, the price and conclusion. It takes a couple of minutes, but let's be honest, or it takes a minute or two, but that's a lot quicker than me going on trying to create all these slides myself. And certainly it's going to throw loads of content in there. It's a great start for 10. It's a great basis for me to get going from. And it's adding speaker notes, really, really key. Okay, and we'll show you that in a second in a little bit more detail. So any second now, we're going to have a PowerPoint slide that's been created. So there we go, fantastic. It's created multiple slides. I've got an agenda, some introduction. I've got engine features, and you can see that it's throwing pictures in. It's grabbed that stuff from the internet or open source libraries that it's able to grab pictures from. But think about this, it knows that I'm talking about a motorbike. It's themed it around a motorbike. It's put pictures of speed dials, bikes and wheels, and it's laid it out and the fonts and colors that it's chosen to use. But importantly, it's also given me speaker notes, which is what you can see there. Okay, based on the text that it's read out of the Word document that we created earlier, it's giving me something to abbreviate at the top there. So the Thunderbird motor fully adjustable suspension, blah, 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 blah. But it also shows the original content, the original stuff that was actually in the Word document underneath it. So I can go into more detail if I needed to. So it's effectively like summarizing sections of that Word document. So let's say maybe I want to glam that up a bit. I can still use things like Designer. Okay, so I can jump in here and say, actually, I want to change the way that front page looks. I want to change the design. If you don't use Designer inside PowerPoint, it's really, really powerful. I'm happy with the way that looks as my opening page. And I can go through all my slides and might decide to change some of the layout. And I can use the AI function that's kind of built into PowerPoint outside of Copilot just to change the way that PowerPoint works and the display and the way that it's laid out. So you can see there that we've got some really powerful use cases within Office 365 and the Microsoft 365 environment. And if we had 8 hours today, I could dig into way more detail and way more information about all the other things that we can do in various other platforms like Power Automate, Power BI, Excel, lots and lots of other things underneath the umbrella that benefit from the Copilot experience. Okay, but I'm going to rein you back in slightly now. Okay, because this is all fantastic. This is all great and stuff that we can absolutely take advantage of. But what we want to make sure is that we're doing this very, very responsibly. Okay, so start to think about some of the things that this means. If we open up AI, we open up this thing that can understand everything about our business. What are the risks associated with that? Okay, now something to take away is that if you ask a question to the Copilot AI assistant, it will only ever feed back information based on the context of the user that asked the question. So if the user that asked the question doesn't have access to anything in finance, for example, Copilot's response will never ever bring back data from the finance team or from documents that the finance team have, because the user that asked it has no permission to it. And that's based on file and folder permissions. Okay. However, I challenge you this. If you, let's say your CFO 5 years ago accidentally dragged a copy of the management accounts or downloaded it from somewhere and stored it accidentally in a folder that's 14 or 15 folders deep, it's nested away into the system and accidentally in the wrong place. The chances of a human being stumbling across that file, pretty slim, to be honest about it. So whilst it's not protected, it's unlikely to be found maybe, okay? But of course, if I put Copilot there, now all I need to do is ask the Copilot, what are the company's overheads? Okay, what was the profit in month 9 of whatever, right? That information may well be stored inside your management accounts, at which point Copilot can respond. That user accidentally has access to information that we didn't even realize they had access to, because that folder's been there forever and no one's really ever looked at it. So we have to go, before we release something like this into the wild, we really need to look at our data. We really need to look at our permissioning and our structure and how we use data and documents and files and where our information is. Otherwise, we could end up exposing confidential data, okay? Maybe you sent somebody in your organization a photo of your passport, okay, because they were booking a flight for you. Okay, fantastic. That was done 4 years ago, right? So way before we were thinking about AI, but now we need to think about that, because where is that passport photo? Because that passport photo's got your date of birth on it. It's got your home address on it. It's got a photo of you on it. Is that document locked down? Hopefully it is, but let's make sure. Let's absolutely ensure that we are protecting some of our staff's data that we're holding as well. Okay. So exposing confidential data is important. Ensuring content accuracy. All right. Now, is Copilot going to learn from the right data? Let's say that you release a product and you regularly review that product. Maybe every year it changes slightly. Here at TaylorMade, we have a IT support service called Business Care, and of course, over the years, our business care offering has changed. And the reason it's changed is that certain types of technology go out of support or decommissioned. So, but it may well be that we have a sales brochure that talks about business care from 15 years ago when we were saying we support Windows XP for the technical people amongst you. Windows XP is now end of life. It doesn't exist anymore, or certainly shouldn't. And of course, if I ask Copilot to create me a sales proposal based on our business care product, what happens if Copilot looks at that document from 10 years ago and says, one of the main selling points is we support Windows XP? We're going to look a bit silly, aren't we? So in the modern world. So think about old data. What's your archive strategy? Okay, do you label your documents to make sure that Copilot only looks at certain bits of information? Yes, we could go back to that prompting piece where we talked about source and say, only look at documents in the last year. But you don't want to be adding that to every single prompt you ever create. And what happens when a member of staff doesn't do that accidentally? Because we're relying on a human being. So think about archiving. Again, think about data, right? Think about how you're structuring stuff. Is that data that you've got stored even right? We created that document earlier about a motorbike and it had all this random information that Copilot had made up. Now, is that information right? Because it's going to learn from that and it's going to assume the TNT Thunderbolt has a 1200cc engine or whatever it said. Okay, so content accuracy, key thing. Copyright, think about your copyright. Let's say you've gone and pinched or downloaded, but for research reasons, some of your competitors' data sheets and information about some of the products and services they deliver, and you're storing that inside your, marketing or sales teams folders, and then you go and ask it to create you a sales proposal or a marketing collateral document. How do you know that Copilot's not just going to go over and nick some of the text from that document you've got saved on your network from your competitor? Okay, so it'll probably reword it, it'll probably rephrase it, but it's learned from that. It thinks that that information is its own and it can reuse it, it can regurgitate that stuff. And you might find yourself in a bit of hot water if that is the case. Okay, so think about what we're doing there. Think about the images and the context that you're using, what information is being pulled from the web. And again, how do we control that? How do we rein the Copilot piece in if we need to? Okay. And then we've got the idea of kind of prompting misinformation. If anybody on the webinar is aware of what prompt engineering is, that's the idea of giving an AI engine lots of information and then asking questions about it. So how do you make sure that the information you're giving it is all the things we've just said, accurate and not sensitive, and et cetera, et cetera? Did you ask a leading question? Did you say, the bus is blue? Tell me what color we provide buses in. Or let's take a motorbike example. We use electric blue. So maybe I said, I've got a yellow Thunderbolt motorbike. Tell me what colors I can get the Thunderbolt motorbike in. Now, the truth is, we can only get it in red, green, electric, blue. But I've just told the AI engine that it's in yellow as well. So actually, its response may be very confused. So think about how we use prompting and how we could be actually steering it or leading the conversation. And ultimately, do you even know what you're asking? And what I mean by that is, I'm a technical person. Okay, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a marketing person. So if I asked it to tell me the 10 best ways to deal with marketing, who am I to sort of suggest that Copilot's giving me misinformation at that point? Okay, I don't know what the best way to do marketing is. I leave that to the marketing team here at TaylorMade. But ultimately, do I know what I'm looking at? Do I understand what I'm reading? Before I accept it as being valid, it might be absolutely wrong. And how do I know that I should use that and move forward with it? Okay. So we've covered off quite a few bits and pieces there around risk and around data and how we need to get organized. And one of the key things we encourage all of our customers to do that are experimenting with AI, whether that's in Power Apps, whether that's in in Power Automate, Power BI, the Power Platform part of Microsoft 365. That's all that automation, streamlining, looking at operational processes that you have in a business, and tailor making come in and help you to understand where do things happen, where information comes into the business. We do these 5 manual things that involves a human, and then it spits out the other side. Obviously, part of the solution that we offer many of our customers is around the Power Platform and streamlining those operational processes to basically become more efficient. Okay, AI is a huge part of that potentially going forward, but we can do that without AI right now if needed. But it does rely on structuring data. So we have this idea of a Copilot readiness assessment, where the readiness assessment, please go and have a look online and find out more information about it. But ultimately, it's about looking at your data, the structure. Where do you put data? What's your archiving process? Do you need to look at things like information protection services to label data? So you're not reliant on where the file is in a folder. We can apply a label to the file, and then the file can live anywhere. It can live in the wrong team, and a team that it shouldn't have access to, but a user cannot access it because the permission's at the file level, not at the folder level. Okay. There are shifts in the way that we manage permissioning going forward. But we will map this out. We'll understand what your data looks like, give you some advice, give you some guidance on maybe approaches to change what you're doing within the thing. And then we'll obviously give you a roadmap. So we'll come back and spend time with you and say, look, in order to get to the point where you want to really get going with Copilot, give it a go. What I would say, though, is if you really want to get to grips with this straight away, maybe look at buying into Copilot, but with some of your senior management team, people that you're not too worried if they overexpose information, they have access to too much sensitive information. What we could do quite easily is get your CEO, your owner, your director, maybe somebody like that. They can use Copilot. If they ask the question and expose something confidential, doesn't really matter too much, potentially. So if that's the case, start with a couple of users with Copilot, get them to use it, ask some probing questions, see what comes out. And if it comes out risky, you need to come and have a chat with us about this. Okay. So we are about 2 minutes away from finishing the webinar. So thank you very much for spending your time with me. I'm not sure if we've got any questions and bits and pieces in the chat, so we're just going to have a quick look. But if you do have any questions you want me to answer, I'm happy to stay on for a bit and kind of go through an understanding of how these things work in more detail if you want. But if you don't have any questions, you're happy, then you are free to go. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. But I will hang around and answer any questions if anybody has any questions. Thank you for your time, everybody. Take care. Is there a way to get a copy of the PowerPoint used today? I'm going to lean on my marketing person. I believe we're recording this, aren't we? Yeah. So we've got a full recording of this webinar. So we can absolutely share this webinar with everybody anyway. And we'll pop it on YouTube. So that's available. We should be able to share the slides potentially. It's going to be more about, a lot of that was video based, so it's probably not easy to digest in PowerPoint files, but we certainly will be putting it on YouTube, so you can access it there if required. If you've got any more questions, please feel free to fire away. Short pricing around Copilot. So effectively at the moment, you have 2 ways of buying Copilot. So someone's just asked, did you have some pricing per user for Copilot? The answer is there's 2 ways of buying Copilot. You can actually buy Copilot in your own Microsoft 365 personal environment. Okay, so if you've got an Outlook account and you buy Microsoft 365 for yourself, then what you can do within that is you can actually go and buy it monthly. So I think it's something like £20 roughly a month for Copilot, but that's enclosed to your own personal estate. With the business side of it, with Microsoft 365 for business, currently you cannot buy it monthly. You have to buy it annually. It's approximately £300-ish, I believe, off the top of my head. But you do have to buy it annually, and it's per user. So it's an upfront commitment. I assume the reason they've decided to go with that annual commit is because a lot of people need to go through the process we've been talking about here, where getting their data organized so that they actually get a result out of it. If you imagine you bought Copilot now and your data is all over the place, the experience is going to be possibly a bit rubbish. So it's probably quite important. The Microsoft are making you buy into this for the long term. So you realize that, oh, it's a bit rubbish at the moment, but maybe if we sorted our data out, we're going to get more effective output. If you bought it for a month and it wasn't very good, you'd probably stop paying for it. So as it stands at the moment, in the channel, you can only buy it annually. That may change in a few months' time. Okay, but it's approximately £300. Obviously, if you're a tailor-made customer, reach out to your account manager and they'll give you a proper price. I'm a techie, so not allowed to talk money. Any more questions? Okay, so I think if that's us done, then thank you very much for your time. If you've got any questions and you just want to engage with us directly, if you want to fire an email over to the sales team, what we'll do is potentially get you in touch with one technical consultants or myself, and we can do some more ingrained technical demos of Copilot if that's of interest to you. But ultimately, I think we're all done then. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.